no one else experiences what this community has. That is our mission. This hearing is an opportunity for the public to see part of the NTSB's investigative process. Normally, these proceedings take place at our headquarters in Washington, D.C. Instead, we're holding a rare field hearing here in East Palestine. We made that decision for one simple reason. The people most affected by this derailment deserve as much insight as possible. Community members deserve to see not just how we're investigating the derailment, but who is doing the work. The real public servants dedicated to finding its cause and advocating for change based on the lessons learned. They deserve to hear what we're learning about the derailment in real time. And they deserve accountability. That's another reason why we're here, so members of the public can hold the NTSB accountable for conducting a fair, thorough, and independent investigation. Just before coming here, I received a letter in the mail from an East Palestine resident. She wrote, "Rail can be safer. It must be safer for all of America." We couldn't agree more, which is why the NTSB takes accountability so seriously. It is our job to hold everyone accountable for safety: local, state, and federal agencies that regulate the rail industry, freight rail companies which own the trains and the tracks that carry hazmat through communities like East Palestine, rail workers who maintain and operate the trains, companies that produce the hazmat and the tank cars used to transport it, and emergency responders who arrive on scene following a disaster. We exist to hold them all accountable. That's why our investigation is much broader than the issues that you'll see before you today. Today we'll be covering two main issues. We'll have more tomorrow, but today we'll focus on, the first panel will be focused on the hazard communications and emergency responder preparedness for the initial emergency response. This afternoon, we'll hear testimony on the circumstances that led to the decision to vent and burn the 5 vinyl chloride tank cars. Tomorrow morning, we'll cover freight car bearing failure modes and wayside detection systems. After that, we'll consider the final topic of the hearing, which is rail tank car safety. These topics were determined and agreed upon at a pre-hearing conference hosted virtually on June 1st, 2023. I'd now like to introduce the NTSB staff who have a role at this hearing and who do an incredible job, not just for this investigation, but for the entire agency. First, we have Stephanie Shaw, who is our hearing officer. Okay. And Ruben Payan, who's our investigator in charge for this investigation, both of whom you'll hear from shortly. Next, we have the chairs of our technical panels. Troy Lloyd, who's a railroad accident investigator, will lead panel 1. Paul Stansel, who's a senior hazardous materials accident investigator, will lead panels 2 and 4. Joey Ryan, a railroad accident investigator, will lead panel 3. Additional NTSB staff that I'd like to introduce are Rob Hall, Director of our Office of Railroad Pipelines and Hazardous Materials Investigations, and Mike Hiller, who's our Deputy Director of that office. I think you're back there. There we go. And Ben Allen behind me will provide legal support. Julie Canan and Dana Sanzo will operate the audio, visuals, and timer. Jennifer Gabris, Keith Holloway, and Eric Weiss will be handling media relations. Eric Grossoff will be handling safety and security. And finally, Elias Contanis and Stephanie Matonic from our Transportation Disaster Assistance Division are here to provide support to those affected by the derailment. Did I miss any? Did I miss any? Nope, I don't. Okay. All right. I'll now introduce the parties designated to participate in this investigative hearing as prescribed in the NTSB rules. The parties to an NTSB investigation are organizations or individuals with special knowledge whose participation we deem necessary in the public interest. While they are not part of the analysis, parties are essential in helping us develop the facts around an investigation. The Federal Register notice of this hearing, published on May 31st, 2023, listed the Ohio State Highway Patrol as a party to the investigation. However, they respectfully declined, citing their discomfort in questioning witnesses from other Ohio State agencies who they consider peers, and I think that's reasonable. As I call the name of each party, I ask the designated party spokesperson to identify themselves and introduce the others from their organization. We will begin with the parties from federal, state, and local government agencies, starting with the Federal Railroad Administration.
Good morning. My name is Carl Alexi. I'm the Associate Administrator for Railroad Safety and FRA's Chief Safety Officer. With me, I have Adam Richter, who is an inspector with our Signal and Train Control Division, and Irvin White, who is an inspector and the IIC on our investigation into this incident, and he's with Motive Power and Equipment.
The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration.
Hello, I'm Bill Schoonover. I'm the Associate Administrator for Hazardous Materials Safety. With me I have Mr. Kerry Davis, who's my Deputy Associate Administrator for Field Operations, and Adam Horsley, who's my General Counsel.
The Village of East Palestine.
Good morning. I'm Peggy Clark. I'm the Director of the Columbiana County Emergency Management Agency, and I'm here assisting the East Palestine Village.
Next, we have the parties representing labor organizations, starting with the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen.
Hi, I'm Quinn Norman with the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen. I've got Jason Jones, the Vice General Chairman here, and Chris Hand.
Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen.
I'm Randy Fannin, National Coordinator, BLET Safety Task Force. I have with me Brian Franson and Sean Lawton, who is the National Coordinator as well and the Assistant for the BLET.
Thank you. International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, or SMART.
Good morning, Jared Cassidy. I'm the director of our national safety team with SMART TD. With me is Jeff Mitchell, our Kentucky State Director and one of our inspectors for the team.
Thank you. Transportation Communications Union and the IAM, or the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers.
Yes, Jason Cox, Transportation Communications International Union with the Brotherhood of Railway Carmen. Thank you.
The International Association of Firefighters.
Good morning. My name is Paul Carey. I'm retired Boston Fire Department District Chief.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. Just going to interject here as we go through introductions. There's going to be a lot of these. This is a fairly rare and historic meeting, as we heard from the chair of the NTSB say that normally these hearings are held in Washington on Capitol Hill. And they didn't feel that was appropriate. She said they wanted the community of East Palestine, the people who are most impacted by all of this, to be able to hear this firsthand. This is being held at the East Palestine High School. It is open to the public. I don't believe they'll be taking any questions from the public or any hearing testimony from them, but so that the public can hear from their own, with their own ears, who is investigating, who is responsible. There was a lot of skepticism, even when the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, rolled into East Palestine. There is this untrust of federal agencies that they're being told the truth about the water quality, the air quality. So when it comes to the issues of the hazard communications, they broke this down into the 4 areas over the next 2 days that they're going to talk about. First up this morning is going to be hazard communications and first responders. This was a major problem. The placards that were on those train cars that derailed instantly melted because they were made out of plastic. So when first responders showed up, they didn't know exactly what they were dealing with. So that's going to be a large part of what's happening today, is the discussion about first responders. That'll be this morning. This afternoon, skepticism over who made the decision to do the controlled burn, those little charges that were put on the cars that were building up pressure. Who ultimately made that decision and why? And then that'll wrap it up for the day. Then tomorrow we'll talk about bearings. The bearings that are within the wheels, that's what ultimately overheated, caused the wheel and the axle to fail. That's what caused this. Should there be stricter regulations on the temperature when that bearing gets above a certain temperature, that train should be forced to shut down? Currently, no federal regulation on what temperature. Then tomorrow afternoon, freight and rail car safety, just looking at the overall issue. So let's take you back now live to East Palestine.
We will follow a similar process for each. Ms. Shaw will begin by introducing the members of each panel and swearing in the witnesses. Some of the witnesses will then exercise their option to make brief opening statements. Witnesses will then be questioned in the following order. First, by the NTSB technical panel, which again includes NTSB staff who are part of this investigation. Next, by the parties in front of me. And finally, by the Board of Inquiry. Parties, that's us. Parties, please remember that only your designated spokesperson may question the witnesses. Right now, we'll only have one round of questions. If anyone questioning the witnesses believes a second round is warranted, please raise your hand. I'll determine whether it's appropriate. If granted, the second round will be limited to questions that clarify the record or address a new matter. If a party spokesperson objects to any question, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by me. I will make all rulings on the admissibility of exhibits, appropriateness of questions, and pertinence of proffered testimony. Mr. Allen, again, who's seated behind me, will provide legal assistance, and all such rulings will be final. A word about conduct. This hearing is an administrative, fact-finding proceeding with no adverse parties. It is not our purpose to assign blame or determine the legal rights or liabilities of any person or entity. Such matters will be excluded from these proceedings. If you will be questioning the witnesses, please remember you must limit your questions to the topics listed in the agenda. Please also refrain from asking questions that call for speculation or analysis. To our witnesses, please respond to questions by providing only the facts as you understand them. You may not speculate as to the cause of the derailment or analyze the facts. Before I invite the hearing officer to introduce the exhibits, I'd like to acknowledge the many people and organizations who've made this hearing possible. First, I extend the board's gratitude to the following organizations for their assistance and collaboration with this event: Federal Protective Service, the East Palestine Police Department, the East Palestine Fire Department, the East Palestine School District, Columbiana County Sheriff's Office, and the Ohio State Highway Patrol. I also want to thank Sarah Dutton, the principal of the school, Janice Cartwright, the secretary for the school, and Mark, Angie, and the entire custodial team for all their work. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate all your partnership. I also want to thank the American Red Cross and the Salvation Army for their contributions. They've generously provided water and snacks, which you can find in the lobby. Additionally, volunteer mental health clinicians from the Red Cross are available to provide emotional support for anyone attending this hearing. Finally, I want to extend the board's gratitude to our colleagues across the NTSB. The Office of Chief Financial Officer, the Office of Chief Information Officer, Office of General Counsel, Office of the Managing Director, Office of Railroad, Pipeline, and Hazardous Materials Investigations, Office of Research and Engineering, Office of Safety Recommendations and Communications, Office of Equal Employment Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Office of Administrative Law Judges, Office of Aviation Safety, and the offices of Vice Chair Landsberg, members Graham and Chapman, as well as my team. Thank you all. Next, the hearing officer will share some reminders and describe the exhibits. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Chair Homendy. If you have not already done so, please silence your electronic devices. Please plan for a 15-minute morning break at 11:30 a.m. and a lunch break from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. The 15-minute afternoon break will occur at about 4:45. Please be advised that these proceedings are being streamed live and video recorded. The video will be posted publicly to the NTSB YouTube channel following the hearing. Now let's discuss exhibits. Exhibits for this hearing include reports produced by NTSB investigative staff, videos, and other documents that have been submitted by the technical panel members, witnesses, and parties to support their testimony and questions you will hear over the next 2 days. The exhibits for this hearing are in 9 separate groups and can be identified by group and number. Group A are administrative exhibits and witness biographies used to pre-qualify the witnesses who will testify in this hearing. Group B are group chairman's factual reports. Group C are exhibits related to the first panel, which is on hazard communications and emergency responder preparedness for the initial emergency response. Group D are the exhibits related to Panel 2, circumstances that led to the decision to vent and burn 5 vinyl chloride tank cars. Group E are the exhibits related to Panel 3, wheel bearings and wayside defect detectors. Group F are the exhibits related to Panel 4 for rail tank car safety. Group G are NTSB introduced interview transcripts. Group H are the party introduced exhibits. And finally, Group M is reserved for other miscellaneous exhibits. The NTSB is authorized by statute to disclose information to carry out its mission, but we protect confidentiality and proprietary information to the greatest extent possible. As such, the exhibits contain redactions. These are the result of negotiations between the parties and the NTSB regarding the disclosure of information claimed to be personally identifiable, security sensitive, or proprietary in nature. Though redacted, the exhibits do contain sufficient information so that members of the public can refer to them during the hearing and throughout the NTSB investigation. These exhibits are entered into the record, and any presentations, along with other recorded records of the investigation, become part of the NTSB public docket and are available via the NTSB website at ntsb.gov. The public docket did open this morning. Party spokespersons and witnesses have been provided electronic copies of the public docket containing the exhibits identified. The docket is located on the East Palestine investigation page, which you can access in one of 2 ways: by visiting ntsb.gov/East Palestine, or by going to our main ntsb.gov page. You'll find a link there. If you've joined us in person, you can scan the QR code on the back of the hearing agenda. On the investigative page, you will find the link to the public docket just above the map. A transcript of the testimony taken during the hearing will be prepared and entered into the docket as soon as possible. In addition, Mr. Allen will keep a list of any documents that are discussed during the hearing that are not currently exhibits in the NTSB public docket, and these documents will be submitted after the hearing and entered into the docket. Additionally, the parties will have the opportunity to submit proposed findings of facts, conclusions, and recommendations to the Board of Inquiry after the close of the hearing. Their submissions are also made public and added to the public docket and will receive careful consideration during the board's analysis of the evidence and preparation of the final report. We encourage the parties to make use of this opportunity. Please note that the submissions must be sent to the NTSB within 60 calendar days of the closing of the hearing by August 21st, 2023, and the parties must also provide copies to each of the other parties as well. Chair Homendy, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shaw. And before I get into the next part, I do want to stress, it is going to be hot in here. There is no air conditioning. We cannot run the fans because then you couldn't hear the proceedings. So if you need to step out, and that includes the witnesses, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. If it's too hot, if you need a break, if you need some water, let us know. Please take that moment to step out, get some air. We want to make sure that everyone is safe and can participate today. So with that, I'll ask our investigator in charge, Ruben Payan, and hazardous materials accident investigator Paul Stansel to provide an overview of the derailment. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair Homendy and members of the Board of Inquiry. On February 3rd, 2003, about 8:54 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, eastbound Norfolk Southern Railway general merchandise freight train 32N derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. At the time of the accident, visibility conditions were dark and clear. The weather was 10 degrees Fahrenheit with no precipitation. The NTSB reviewed mechanical inspections and train operations for train 32N from where the train originated as part of the investigation. The train set was built at the Terminal Railroad Association yard in Madison, Illinois, where a mechanical inspection and air brake tests were performed by a railroad qualified mechanical inspector on February 1st. The train departed the Madison, Illinois yard on February 1st as eastbound general merchandise train 32N. Train 32N traveled to Decatur, Illinois, where it had 55 rail cars removed and 41 rail cars added to the train consist. The third locomotive was moved from the front of the train to mid-train as a distributive power unit locomotive. The 41 rail cars that were added received a mechanical inspection and air brake test by a railroad qualified mechanical inspector. The train was cleared to depart with no identified mechanical problems. On February 2nd, near Bement, Illinois, train 32N experienced brake pipe air pressure problems, which caused a 2-hour delay while the end of train device was replaced by mechanical personnel, and the train 32N was cleared to continue. Later that day, near Williamsport, Indiana, train 32N experienced a train line-induced emergency brake application due to a broken coupler knuckle on a non-hazardous material tank car. The broken knuckle was replaced by mechanical personnel, and the train was cleared to continue. On February 3rd, train 32N departed Peru, Indiana. The train consist remained unchanged with 2 locomotives at the head end, 149 rail cars, and a DPU locomotive mid-train. Train 32N continued to Toledo, Ohio with no reported problems. In Toledo, Ohio, train 32N departed with a new train engineer, conductor, and conductor trainee. At 8:53, as train 32N operated through the village of East Palestine, Ohio, the train crew received an audible critical alarm message over the locomotive radio for a hot bearing on axle 101 on the south rail. The 101st axle corresponded to the lead axle of the 23rd rail car behind the locomotives, which was hopper car GPLX 75465. The train engineer was in the process of stopping the train when a train line emergency brake application occurred. Following the emergency brake application, train event recorder data indicated the locomotives traveled an additional 1,368 feet before coming to a stop. Rail cars 1 through 22 remained behind the locomotives and stopped east of the derailment pileup. 38 rail cars were derailed and included rail cars 23 through 60. The rail cars came to rest about 400 feet east of the Pleasant Drive Highway Rail grade crossing in East Palestine, Ohio. 12 rail cars, cars 61 through 72, did not derail, but were damaged by the post-accident fire. The remaining 77 cars, cars 73 through 149, did not derail and stopped west of the derailment pileup. The investigation identified scrape markings along the top railhead of the south running rail at milepost 49.5, which is about 120 feet west of the Pleasant Drive Highway Rail grade crossing. This was determined to be the point of derailment. Wheel set 1 from hopper car GPLX 75465 was found adjacent to the car with the L1 journal burnt off and located just east of the derailment pileup. The burnt-off journal and bearing segments were located just west of the derailment pileup on the south side of Main Track 1. NS Train 32N went by 40 wayside defect detector locations between February 1st in Madison, Illinois, and February 3rd in East Palestine, Ohio. The 40 wayside defect detector locations consisted of 39 dragging equipment detectors, 10 hot wheel detectors, 1 T-bogey detector or truck bogey optical geometry inspection detector, 1 wheel impact load detector, and 39 hot bearing detectors. Post-accident interviews of the previous train crews did not identify any defect detector alarms for train 32N. In addition, data from the NS ATC desk also did not indicate any critical alerts for train 32N during the prior train movements. The NTSB investigation focused on the 3 hot-bearing defect detectors that train 32N traversed approaching the point of derailment. The Sebring detector was located about 30 miles from the point of derailment at milepost 79.8. After train 32N traversed the Sebring detector, data indicated the L1 axle bearing temperature was 38 degrees and the R1 axle was 18 degrees, while the train was traveling at a maximum speed of 37 miles per hour over the detector. There was no alarm radio broadcast to the train crew, nor an alert sent to the ATC desk, since all wheel bearing temperatures were within tolerance. The Salem detector was located about 20 miles from the point of derailment at milepost 69.1. When train 32N traversed the Salem detector, data indicated the L1 axle bearing temperature was 103 degrees and the R1 axle bearing was 20 degrees, with the train traveling at a maximum speed of 25 miles per hour over the detector. There was no alarm radio broadcast to the train crew, but a non-critical alert was transmitted to the ATC desk as the L1 axle bearing was showing an increase in temperature from the previous defect detector location. The East Palestine detector was located about 0.3 of a mile from the point of derailment at milepost 49.8. When train 32N traversed the East Palestine detector, data indicated the L1 axle bearing temperature was 253 degrees and the R1 axle bearing was 20 degrees, with the train traveling at a maximum speed of 47 miles per hour over the detector. The detector broadcasted an audible alert over the radio to the train crew of the critical alarm as soon as the 23rd rail car traversed the detector field equipment. No data was transmitted to the ATC desk since the train stopped over the detector equipment, and the detector would not transmit the data until the entire train traversed and cleared the equipment. The NTSB investigation also collected additional sources of information that could help identify a point along the route of train 32N where indications of mechanical problems initiated. Following the accident, investigators were provided security videos from private homes and local businesses located along the railroad tracks. In addition, NTSB canvassed the area around the derailment site and worked back along the accident train route. Additional witnesses and video footage were identified and obtained. This is a compilation showing train 32N as it approached East Palestine on the night of the derailment. About 50 miles from the point of derailment, as train 32N traveled through Ravenna, Ohio, 2 video sources were identified. The first was at Spring Street, and the second one was near Prospect Street. The video footage indicated train 32N going by, but did not show any indications of mechanical problems. About 45 miles from the point of derailment, train 32N was next recorded as it went through Rootstown, Ohio, near Industry Road. Train 32N came into view through the trees, and a high-pitched squeal can be heard. The squeal increases in intensity for about 2 seconds, then is no longer heard again. About 40 miles from the point of derailment, train 32N was near Keystone Street in Alliance, Ohio. The train is visible, but did not show any indications of a mechanical problem. About 38 miles from the accident, train 32N was next recorded by several cameras as it went through Sebring, Ohio, near West California Avenue. A screenshot of train 32N came into view, but no indications of a mechanical problem can be seen. In Salem, Ohio, about 26 miles from the point of derailment, train 32N was recorded near West Wilson Street, and the glow of a fire is visible underneath the 23rd hopper car. "32N is again recorded near Ellsworth Avenue, South Lincoln Avenue, and Snyder Road, showing a visible glow of a fire underneath the same rail car. As train 32N continued into Columbiana, Ohio, near Main Street, several locations captured the hopper car with a fire underneath the lead axle. A witness near South Vine Street also reported hearing an unusually loud metal scraping sound, but did not remember seeing a fire. In New Waterford, Ohio, train 32N was recorded with fire and sparks underneath the hopper car near Bull Creek Road and Boardman Street. In East Palestine, Ohio, train 32N was recorded at several locations near East Clark Street and North James Street. In the recordings, a distorted, high-pitched squealing sound is heard, then two loud bangs, train braking, and a bright flash. Following the train derailment at 8:54, the first 911 call to the East Palestino Police was received at 8:56. At 8:58, the first alarm to Station 24 went out to request all available fire and EMS personnel to respond to Pleasant and East Taggart Street for train derailment and fire. At about 9 p.m., the East Palestine Volunteer Fire Department arrived on scene. A second alarm to Station 24 went out at about 9:01, requesting all available fire and EMS to report to the station and respond to East Taggart and Alice Street. East Palestine Dispatch contacted the Norfolk Southern in Atlanta, Georgia at 9:04 to obtain information. Norfolk Southern took their information and instructed them that they would call back. At 9:07, the incident commander called dispatch from the scene to request a hazmat team and an engine and tanker from Springfield. At about 9:08, East Palestine Dispatch sent a request to Station 11 and Station 24, requesting all available personnel to respond. At 9:10, the director of the Columbiana County Emergency Management Agency received a cell phone call as the initial notification of the incident. At 9:15, the director of the Columbiana County EMA called the manager of Beaver County, Pennsylvania EMA to request hazmat mutual aid response. At 9:19, the train crew of 32N radioed the Norfolk Southern Railroad dispatcher and requested to cut the locomotives away from the train. The dispatcher approved the movement, and the locomotives were moved about 300 feet east of the train. At 9:24, the fire chief from the East Liverpool Fire Department Hazmat received the first notification of the activation. At 9:27, the train conductor, referencing his hazmat guidebook, learned the guidebook indicated they should be 1 mile away from the hazardous.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. If you are watching on Facebook the NTSB hearing that's taking place in East Palestine, we're going to be switching over. For only you that are watching on Facebook, you will need to switch over to cleveland19.com. We have it streaming on cleveland19.com. It's going to be streaming there all day, but we do have other news to get to on our Facebook platform. So again, if you're watching on Facebook, want to continue watching, we've seen some compelling evidence already. Who knew that that train was on fire miles and miles and miles before? We had seen some of that surveillance video, but a lot of that was new, showing that those bearings and those wheels were on fire as far back as Sebring, Ohio, some 10, 15, 20 miles before the derailment. So again, if you're watching on Facebook, we're going to switch this over to just cleveland19.com. Click into the story and it'll be live there.
The tank cars and prescribed response procedure guidance being